The Pacific Northwest of the United States, a land of trees, mountains, and people who are so supportive of non-straight people that I think the sheer mention of the region is giving a hardcore conservative a cardiac arrest, and the Empire Builder, crossing the northern United States from Seattle and Portland to Chicago day by day, with Amtrak's newest fleet of diesels leading. For the most part anyways. During March of 2025, my dad and I went to the Pacific Northwest region and rode on the Empire Builder all the way from Portland to Chicago, through Glacier National Park, and passing by multiple trains both common and rare, as well as a display or two of old steam locomotives that last ran years ago. Part 1 of this series will cover the segment around Oregon, mainly in Portland, but we do travel along the Oregon side of the Columbia River Gorge. Part 2 will cover the first part of the Empire Builder trip from Portland to Havre, Montana, and Part 3 will cover the rest of Montana, go to Chicago, and ride to CTAL, before finally heading back to Denver. Although I may have intentionally ridden on the L for a little bit longer against my dad's wishes. Sorry about that, Dad. I just wanted to get some better footage of the CTAL, as well as head to Balboa Station where that one scene from The Fugitive was filmed.
LaSalle and Van Buren is next.
Right now, it's part 1, so let's head to our first segment of this trip in Oregon, shall we? It's the morning of March 18th, and we're at Denver International Airport. We're about to board a flight from Denver to Portland, and this is one of those times where I wish that the Pioneer and Desert Wind were still around. Top of the morning, Lucifer. But anyways, after getting through security, I would then head to the B gate where our flight was waiting.
The doors are closing. Please keep clear and hold on for departure to all A gates.
Oh, is that mine?
Exit here for all A gates.
It's a weird way to say delivery every other airline that isn't United in Southwest Gate.
Please watch your step.
The doors are closing. Please keep clear and hold on for departure to all B gates.
Hold on, please. We are approaching the station for all B gates. gate.
Nice stuff.
Please watch your step.
You guys have a good day. We're now on the flight, and we're about to take off from Denver and head to Portland. Approximately 8:10 a.m., we took off from Denver and we'll be in Portland in about 2 hours. A little over 2 hours later, we are in the skies above Portland, Oregon, and the weather has obviously changed dramatically, as the skies will be anything but sunny for the entire time that I was in Portland. Finally, we'd touch Oregonian soil at 9:42 a.m. Pacific time.
Welcome to Portland, where the local time is 9:42 a.m.
I
for flying
said
with
I
us.
don't
It's been our
care.
pleasure serving you, and we look forward to seeing you again soon on another United flight. We hope you have a great day.
Yeah, sure.
Once that fasten seatbelt sign is turned off, please stand clear of the door area to
Oh
allow
my
your
god, I
flight
get it,
attendants to
I
complete
don't,
important safety
I get it, and I
responsibilities.
don't care. And you wouldn't what?
I wouldn't fight that guy either. You know, but if he touched you or did anything to you, I would.
We are now at Portland International Airport, and it has a stunning new terminal. Through the late 2010s and early 2020s, Portland International Airport went through a makeover with new terminal buildings, and the main terminal was rebuilt into a beautiful new building, with some even saying that it's America's first beautiful airport. And to be honest, I don't blame him for thinking that way. Also in the new terminal were the models used for Guillermo del Toro and Mark Gustafson's stop-motion Pinocchio. Mark Gustafson, who was from Portland, helped with the stop-motion elements of the film, and interestingly enough, he also worked on Wes Anderson's Fantastic Mr. Fox, another stop-motion film, also a great film. Sadly, though, he passed away the year before, but he has not been forgotten, and hopefully will never be forgotten. Oh, wow. I need to see this Pinocchio's now. All the times for that light rail train to come out. After acquiring a Jeep, we would drive through the Columbia River Gorge. The Oregon side of the Columbia River Gorge is tracked by the Union Pacific, who originally built this line through a subsidiary called the Oregon Railroad and Navigation Company. I would record to look for any trains that would be traveling along the line. Unfortunately, that would be a little difficult as there weren't that many trains when we were heading eastbound along the gorge.
We're doing it. We're in the gorge. I'll be keeping my eyes on you. Halfway in the other lane.
I didn't notice that.
That's pretty.
Eventually, we made it to Hood River.
City Center.
Yeah.
Stop.
And I took a pic of a shirt in one of the stores there for fun. There was also the Mount Hood Railroad here at Hood River, but I don't know if you guys know about this, but heritage railroads don't exactly run during winter months and weekdays, and therefore they weren't running. The station also once served Amtrak's Pioneer train until 1997, and I only pray that it receives Amtrak service again, because an Amtrak train connection here would honestly be pretty cool.
I mean, I know you're always posting stuff. Oh, you did? Wow.
There was also this car here, which for some reason wasn't closed off, and honestly, I kinda hope that this isn't trespassing.
This car isn't closed off. It's a shame we'll be gone pretty soon.
I took some more pics on the car of the mounted railroad, then we had lunch, and then I would take some pics of the Washington side of the Columbia River. We got back on the highway, and then I would take this pic of a signal which I thought was a searchlight signal. We also saw some more signals that likely dated back all the way to the 80s or 90s, or even further, and almost certainly were replaced by the time I made this video.
There's a train up there? Yeah. Like it's in a siding.
Is it moving?
No. Doesn't look like it.
Well, maybe there'll be some action up here where we want it to be. Train action! Train action!
I thought this line of reefers was a train, but unfortunately it was more likely a block of reefers being stored on a siding.
That train didn't have any engines on it.
We are passing through the Dalles, which includes a bit of a lumber industry, and the town also includes the Dalles Dam. The Pioneer also served the Dalles until its discontinuance, but if the long-distance study map becomes reality, maybe it'll get that service back. As mentioned, this town includes the Dalles Dam. Since ship traffic also goes along the Columbia River, there is a lock along the dam, but it's on the Washington side of the dam. We have now made it to the Oregon Trunk Rail Bridge. However, there isn't a spot around the bridge to stop, but there is one slightly east of here, Celilo Park.
Wow, look at that. So that's how they move it?
Yeah, that's a lift bridge.
Wow. Are you video?
Yes, video. Also looks like that's a junction off of the Union Pacific to connect with the line.
So you're saying there's a separate one for BN?
Yes.
Oh, look at that. It lifts it all the way across.
Not long after getting to Celilo Park, a westbound Union Pacific train headed by two C-44 ACMs, one a former AC-4400 CW and one a former AC-6000 CW, heads through. These rebuilds of mainly GE locomotives from the 1990s to the 2000s have allowed for railroads like the Union Pacific, Canadian Pacific, CSX, and Canadian National to extend the lifespans of many of their locomotives, as well as make them more fuel efficient and slightly more powerful, something Norfolk Southern began doing in the mid-2010s, who may have kicked off the trend of rebuilding GE locomotives. EMD locomotives from the 90s have also been rebuilt, albeit with varying success, and the EMD rebuilds aren't nearly as popular as the GE rebuilds.
Nothing to me, man.
Some time passed by and a BNSF train along the Oregon trunk line passes through. I would then walk to a spot where I would be able to see the BNSF train crossing over the Oregon Trunk Bridge, which, although was a bit far for me, would certainly be pretty cool to see anyways. Although I don't think the wind was exactly pleased with my plan of seeing a BNSF train crossing the Columbia River over the Oregon Trunk Bridge. It's also migration season, and a couple of geese were also around here.
visible enough from.
How close can you be? It's a bridge. You want to be on a boat? You want to get out on our boat? That's pretty cool.
Absolutely.
Did you see it come down? The bridge?
No.
Maybe you'll catch it going up.
Yeah.
The other side of the road catching that. So I heard it and I'm like, where is he? And then I realized
I was so over at the crossing. Yeah, I was trying to anticipate a second Union Pacific train.
and then you ran to the other side of the road.
Yes.
Union Pacific 1031, formerly Southern Pacific 9790, passes through the area light engine. This is a GP60, or otherwise known as a Jeep. Although when they were built, they were mostly used for mainline services, these days a lot of these Jeeps are used for local or branch line service. On the Washington side, a BNSF train with autorack cars passes by. The Washington side of the Columbia River carries the tracks of the former Spokane, Portland, and Seattle Railway, a subsidiary of both Great Northern and Northern Pacific. Mainly Northern Pacific though, as the SP&S's steam locomotives mostly derive from the NP. Although I caught quite a few trains around this area, I still wanted to see one more train. After the necessity of having to take a near lethal dose of patience, for real, rail fanning is so hard if you don't have patience, an Eastbound Union Pacific manifest flies through.
history shining in the sun. We're the Union Pacific, and our stories must just begun.
An SD70M and an SD70 Ace with the Union Pacific's 2022 livery bring up the rear.
Well, freaking finally.
With that finished, we'd head back to Portland.
Yes, taking video.
As a side note, the volume is being kept down because Kendrick Lamar was being played on the radio, and I'm not sure if the copyright holders of Kendrick Lamar would exactly approve of me making money off of this video while having their music in this video. Not even they not like us. like us. They not like us. They not like us. The Portland area is split into two by the Willamette River, and several bridges connect the two sides, mainly road bridges, but there are a couple of rail bridges here, including one bridge exclusively for anything but cars. I'll get to that in a bit. We ultimately got to our hotel, which had the US flag and an LGBTQ plus flag next to it, as did the hotel right next to it. LGBTQ plus support is big in Portland, and these hotels that had pride flags on them are only a fraction of said support. I could go on about LGBTQ plus culture in the Pacific Northwest, but we'd be here all day, if not all night, if I did. We also had dinner at a place called Jake's Famous Crawfish, which has been around since the 1890s according to the info inside the place. And while walking off all that food, we'd see a light rail train from the Max. I thought it was a streetcar, and while Portland does have streetcars, these weren't it.
Streetcar.
The next day, I'd take a ride on the Max. Unfortunately, this first train wasn't in service.
Oh, you're kidding me.
But it wasn't long before the next Max train came. Portland's Max seems to be one of the few systems in the US that are at least decent when it comes to service and frequency. Max has a long way to go before their service could be thought as like on par with European mass transit, but right now Max has seemingly an exceptional system that helps Portlanders without cars get around, and probably better than some other systems around the US too.
Cool. Thanks.
Having fun?
Yes.
Redefining downtown Portland. Solve the problem. There's a problem down here that needs to be solved. And I know how to solve it.
wonder if holding on also applies to sitting.
Smoking is prohibited on buses, trains, and transit property. Está prohibido fumar en autobuses, trenes y propiedades de trenes.
This is the Tilikum Crossing Bridge. It was opened in 2015 as originally part of a way to bring the Max Orange Line into existence from downtown to Milwaukee. This bridge serves the Max Orange Light Rail Line and A and B streetcar lines, buses, bus rapid transit, and people can walk, bike, skateboard, rollerblade/skate, I don't think a lot of people know or care about the difference anyways, or scooter over the bridge. But cars aren't allowed on this bridge. So PragerU absolutely 100% approves of this bridge and isn't crying that this bridge hurts quote-unquote freedom, assuming that by your definitions, freedom equals car dependency. This is the Oregon Rail Heritage Center. I want to go here, but unfortunately that day was a Wednesday and they weren't open on Wednesdays. Luckily, I would still be there for Thursday.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
That's what I said, right?
What, WTF?
Yeah.
Where?
Right? Big black and white letters.
Oh yeah. Probably means what the fuck.
That's what I'm thinking.
It's a good thing my mom's not here, or she'd get very triggered at me saying curse words.
Despite that minor disappointment and slight setback to my plans for Portland, I decided to head to Union Station.
There's a bus behind us right now. Denver had a streetcar.
Línea amarilla en dirección norte hacia Portland Expo Center.
So this train turns from an orange line train into a yellow line train.
At PSU South, SW, 6th, and College, our orange line train becomes a yellow line train, to which I honestly don't get why they just couldn't have the orange line or yellow line be a full Expo Center to Milwaukee line. This is also the beginning for the green line. The green line extends from Clackamas, I butchered that, didn't I, to Portland. But there are/were plans to have it also go regional and be extended to Tigard. I also butchered that, didn't I? However, those plans were shot down in a 2020 ballot measure. And while I can't confirm this, I think I read somewhere that the plans aren't entirely dead in the water yet and could be brought up again in some sort of future ballot measure. But that's just a hopeful.
There'll be some pretty cool statues coming up here pretty soon.
Yeah.
Línea amarilla en dirección norte hacia Portland Expo Center.
Big, huge ones.
The doors are closing. Train departing. Please hold on. Valid and correct fare is required on TriMet. Se requiere tener un boleto válido y correcto al viajar en TriMet. Smoking is prohibited on buses, trains, and TriMet property. Está prohibido fumar en autobuses, trenes y propiedades de TriMet. Transfer to blue and red line trains on Yatel and Morrison. Transferencia a los trenes de la línea 1 y roja en Yatel y Morrison. Yellow line train to Portland Expo Center. Línea amarilla en dirección norte hacia Portland Expo Center.
Either a blue or red line train passes behind us. While currently the blue and red lines currently run at grade through downtown, there is also a plan to have the red and blue lines be put into a tunnel that would go underneath Portland, in a bit of way similar to Seattle's Link, which is also a light rail that runs underground like a subway.
Yellow line train to Polson Expo Center. Línea amarilla en dirección norte hacia Polson Expo Center. The doors are closing. Train departing. Please hold on.
That over there is Portland Union Station. It was opened in 1896 and at its heyday served the Union Pacific, Southern Pacific, Spokane, Portland, and Seattle, Great Northern, and Northern Pacific. I wanted to get a shot on the platforms, but unfortunately I wasn't a passenger on any trains at that time, so I couldn't go on the platforms.
Wow.
But I would still catch some trains. Arriving right now is the Portland section of the Empire Builder. The train was operated by an ALC-42 Big Arm, ALC-42 One Arm, ALC-42 Overalls, ALC-42 Hillbilly? Wait, what? ALC-42, one of those charging things. Okay, close. ALC-42 Charger locomotives. 75 and later 50 more, becoming 125. ALC-42s were ordered in 2018 and entered service in 2022. These are part of the Siemens Charger family, a locomotive type used by Amtrak and many other railroads. And fortunately, these locomotives and the rest of the Charger family are pretty well liked by most of the railfan community. Nah, I'm just kidding. In typical railfan fashion, railfans were about as happy with the ALC-42s and the Siemens Charger family in general as this guy from Random Pyrocynical video I screenshotted for a previous Q&A video is happy with anime and people who like anime existing. And to be honest, I think they're way too overhated. But I guess that is just the side effects from one too many doses of hatred of new rolling stock. Despite having a rough entry into service, these locomotives have been performing way better now compared to 2022, and much to the denialism of the Siemens Charger hatedom, are even performing better than the Smokers' Genesis that they're set to replace. Speaking of Chargers, or if you're a 5008 Creations fan, a Charger, here's an original SC-44 leading an Amtrak Cascades train into Portland.
I've been constantly seeing 32 axles needed on a lot of routes.
The Amtrak Cascade service has its own paint scheme, and the locomotive leading WDTX 1406 shows so. But the coaches, which are Horizon cars, don't match the locomotive. But the cars did for the most part until 2021. And that's because the Tago 6 sets, which ran on the route, weren't very helpful in crashes, and I think they were even banned outside of the Cascade service. And an unscheduled station stop on the I-5... Okay, I sugarcoated that, a crash, in 2017 sealed their fate, resulting in them ultimately being retired. 2 Talco 8 sets run on the Cascades, though, so they still have some identity. Unfortunately, the Horizons didn't give any of that. The good news is that the Amtrak Aero cars for the Cascades will be entering service in 2026, giving the Amtrak Cascades identity back to its trains, and allow for a higher capacity than the Talgo 6s, give passengers a safer type of rail car than the Talgo 6 sets, as well as the potential for adding more frequent trains on the Cascade service. The bad news is that the original 2024 entry into service date was pushed back to 2026 because of some cafe car redesigns or something, and because of that, the Aeros didn't arrive in time for a massive Horizon car corrosion problem to hit Amtrak. After my visit, Amtrak pulled all of its active Horizon cars out of service, and if this article were to be believed, these cars were probably ticking time bombs that were about to go off at any moment. Info varies, and some say that the Horizon cars are now forced into early retirement since the Amtrak Aeros are on their way, as well as Venture coaches, and they would enter into service soon anyways, while others say that Alstom, who succeeded Bombardier, who originally built the Horizons, are fixing the problem. Either way, this has created problems for Amtrak, especially the Cascade service, which relied on these cars until then. Am fleets from the NEC are in place of the Horizons until either some Horizons come back or the Cascades fleet of the Aeros enter into service. This train also had a baggage car on the rear for some reason. I thought that it could be for axle counts, but it doesn't look like that's the case. There's also P42 DC-72. Some of the Genesis locomotives are currently being used as a bit of cab cars until cab cars arrive. Here's a hardcore foamer delighting sight. 2 GEVOs from BNSF. There's a BNSF yard near Union Station, although I am not sure why the GEVOs were going to Union Station. Maybe it's for a crew change, but I am not entirely sure. Every railfan slash foamer's least favorite locomotives in less than an hour. Awesome! In the distance, the Portland section of the Empire Builder arrives before departing to Spokane and eventually Chicago. Before that would happen though, a southbound Coast Starlight train, Train 11 from Seattle, would arrive at Portland. Two Amtrak P42 DCs are leading the Coast Starlight, one in Phase 5, the other in Phase 7. Despite Amtrak starting to replace the Genesis with Chargers, many Genesis locomotives are still being painted into Phase 7, and even some Genesis locomotives are being converted into P42C cab cars. like the F-40s before them. The superliners are used on all long-distance trains west of the Mississippi River, and while they're reliable, Amtrak is currently procuring a replacement for the superliners. However, complicated designs with the original plans that Amtrak had in mind caused some manufacturers to balk. And if this part in one of the trains.com articles were to be believed, it's paused indefinitely. There's not much more info on how long that had happened, if it were true, if Amtrak did pause procurement but resumed it, if Amtrak is resuming it, or if Amtrak never paused procurement in the first place. I'm not sure of what the status of Amtrak's superliner replacements are right now, and I only pray that whatever the issues are, Amtrak will be or have been able to resolve them, and soon enough be able to order the new long-distance fleet for its long-distance trains. Regardless of potential delays, the superliners are pretty much immortal, so I think they'll still be in shape when the new long-distance fleet comes into service. I also kinda hope Stadler wins the contract since Siemens has their hands full, and I think this would allow for Stadler to prove themselves worthy.
You can't hop a train anymore and feel the freedom. On rails aboard the devil's eye and fall. Many times on a baby, you can be my oh, but you can't hop a train anymore. Now you can't hop a train anymore.
I then went to the Oregon Maritime Museum, which included the last operational sternwheeler tug in the United States. Unfortunately, I may have misunderstood something because it looked like the entrance to the tug was closed off. So, I decided to head back to Union Station.
Eastbound Red Line train to Portland Airport. Línea roja en dirección este hacia el aeropuerto de Portland. The doors are closing. Train departing. Please hold on. Old Town, Chinatown. Doors to the right. Eastbound Red Line train to Portland Airport. Línea roja.
In the distance, Amtrak's Coast Starlight is departing Portland, headed for Los Angeles.
Northwest 6th and Davis Street. Doors to the right. The doors are closing. Train departing. Please hold on. Union Station, Northwest 6th and Hoyt Street.
That announcement for Union Station should have been my quote to get off the train I was on, but...
Northbound Yellow Line train to Portland Expo Center. Línea amarilla en dirección norte hacia Portland Expo Center.
Oh yeah? Yeah.
The doors are closing. Train departing. Please hold on.
Stations that if they don't give change. Oh. So if you wanted to put, and they only issue hot cards. Right. You can put money in your existing hot card or buy a new one for $3. Right. And so that's the way of the future. No more paper tickets. So if you have a hot card? I do. Okay. So it's really convenient. You just go to any one of those machines, put money on it. Yeah. But if you say no, you get your $20. Yeah.
Oh, Christ.
Okay.
I didn't get off the train because I thought I would be able to get one stop further and closer to the station. That was unfortunately not the case for me, and I would end up crossing the river instead.
Interstate Race Corridor, Moda Center, and Veterans Memorial Coliseum. Doors to the right. Transfer to blue, green, and red line trains by walking one block east. Transferencia a los trenes de las líneas azul, verde y roja, caminando una cuadra hacia el este.
Yeah, so I didn't know that. Oh, there it is. I've seen the blue vests. I know what they do. Their outreach. PPI, Portland Patrol.
I did immediately find a train that would take me back across the river though, so let's head on that.
The doors are closing. Train departing. Please hold on.
Well, I'm holding on. After getting off the train, I would head back to the crossing I was at before to catch the Empire Builder leaving Portland. There was an XF40PH cab car in Cascades colors and WDTX 1405. Fortunately, if you say that the Chargers are ugly, don't worry, this will be the ugliest thing you'll see in these videos. as I didn't see any of the Talgo 8 sets because, dear God, look at me with a straight face and tell me that the Talgo 8s look better than the Chargers. No, you can't. But anyways, a little bit before 5 p.m., Amtrak's Empire Builder would depart Portland to head east. In a few hours, it would connect with the Seattle section of the Empire Builder and continue on to Chicago.
Hey, you waved at me.
One interesting note about this train is that the Empire Builder was in fact the launch route for both the Superliner fleet and the ALC-42s. So this train was using 2 sets of rolling stock that this line launched. As I headed towards the blue and red lines, I saw a freight train headed into Portland Union Station, likely to also head to the BNSF yard near Portland.
Westbound Red Line train to Hillsborough Airport, Fairgrounds. The doors are closing. Train departing. Please hold on. Skidmore Fountain. Doors to the right. Oak, Southwest 1st Avenue. Doors to the right.
Get out here? I think so.
This is a westbound Red Line train to Hillsborough Airport, Fairgrounds. The doors are closing. Train departing. Please hold on. The doors are closing. Train departing. Please hold on. Southwest 3rd Avenue. Doors to the left.
No? I don't even have my number, babe.
This is a westbound Red Line train to Hillsborough Airport, Fairgrounds. The doors are closing. Train departing. Please hold on. Valid and correct fare is required on TriMet. Se requiere tener un boleto válido y correcto al viajar en TriMet. Smoking is prohibited on buses, trains, and TriMet property. Está prohibido fumar en autobuses, trenes y propiedades de TriMet. Pioneer Courthouse Square and TriMet Customer Support Center. Transfer to bus and MAX service on 5th and 6th Avenues. Doors to the left. Pioneer Courthouse Square y Centro de Apoyo al Cliente de TriMet. Transbordo el servicio de autobús y MAX sobre la 5ª y 6ª Avenida. This is a westbound Red Line train to Hillsborough Airport, Fairgrounds. The doors are closing. Train departing. Please hold on. Valid and correct fare is required on TriMet. Se requiere tener un boleto válido y correcto al viajar en TriMet. Smoking is prohibited on buses, trains, and TriMet property. Está prohibido fumar en autobuses, trenes y propiedades de TriMet. Galleria, Southwest 10th Avenue. Doors to the left. Transfer to the Portland streetcar on 10th and 11th Avenues. Transbordo al Portland streetcar en las avenidas 10 y 11. This is a westbound Red Line train to Hillsborough Airport, Fairgrounds. The doors are closing. Train departing. Please hold on.
I'm not sure what those tracks are, but I presume they could be layover facilities for the blue and red lines.
Goose Hollow, Southwest Jefferson. Doors to the right.
Showed up like that.
What was that?
This is a westbound Red Line train to Hillsborough Airport, Fairgrounds. The doors are closing. Train departing. Please hold on.
That there's the Vista Bridge that carries Vista Avenue. We are entering the Robertson Tunnel. It was opened on September 12, 1998, as part of the West Side extension that reached Hillsborough, although there are extension plans to reach Forest Grove in the future.
Hello? Hi, Mom. Bien. Sí, señora. I was able to see some trains. Huh? Yes.
I'm about to head back and then go eat with Dad.
Washington Park. Doors to the
We don't know right now. Here we stop at the Washington Park station, which also the making of this video is the only completely underground MAX station, unless the tunnel is approved, funded, and constructed, and is the deepest station in not just America, but North America in general. This station connects not only Washington Park, but also the Oregon Zoo, which also has a mini train right there. I would have gone and rode the train there if this wasn't a winter season month. And if spring breaks didn't lie in March and April. Uh-huh. Then... Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Si, senora. Te amo.
Smoking is prohibited on buses, trains, and TriMet property. Está prohibido fumar en autobuses, trenes,
Si, senora. Mwah. Mwah. Ciao. Blah, 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 blah.
Oh,
sorry.
Sunset Transit Center. Doors to the right.
I theoretically make it.
It's not Noah, it's Noe. I'll take some.
Here at Sunset Transit Center, I got off the train. I would have gone further and even met the West, but I had already promised to Dad that I'd be back by 6 that day, and I determined that this was the furthest I could have gotten before having to go back. Luckily, my train back came pretty quickly.
Portland.
So a lot of people have those onesies moving on pretty far. They count for the okay. So they usually let's say 2 3 seats of like honestly the top 5 seating is really a lot of these brackets are tested. So then they're like based on their not just have that outside, they obviously get something else that's strong. So even if that's just next game and you have that upside, like you know, as long as you got the other being right, you're doing well. And is it different for every it's like our companies that are doing it, I don't know how you're just like honest doesn't matter.
The doors are closing. Train departing. Please hold on.
All the stuff. So what it is, there's almost always like 12 upsells per car. At least the last couple of years has been 2 upsells for 5 cents per car. And so now they've staffed like what's the most favorite upsell?
Unfortunately, the correct fare is required on Tryman. Se requiere tener un boleto válido y correcto al viajar en Tryman. Smoking is prohibited on buses, trains, and Tryman property. Está prohibido fumar en autobuses.
That guy had a Miku waifu pillow.
But they also match up well against these teams. Or maybe these teams, they might be something like Wishram, when these they're struggling making it to here. And like UCC, even their friends, regionals, they don't give up on Wishram. That favors UCC. Okay. Yeah. This problematic thing. Yeah, so I can just and now that this like right. And then if you put the preview on the front of the app, it'll like you're going to compare, but it'll say like it'll show you the odds. It'll show you the highest like the top players. Their notable results, so whether wins or losses against like other good teams. Okay. And so you can see that way and see like obviously Bradley's not good as a team, but like you know Mizzou beat Florida, which is a team that a lot of people think would
Library.
and then it'll show them the comparison of
Transfer to the Portland streetcar on 10
Drake's
and 11
defense better, so they get up on
Portland streetcar is
so then you said, okay, well, theoretically, Drake might score normally they do about 24. Drake would play better teams, so they're better scoring teams. Drake only scores 17, so like that might be about the score. If Mizzou scores 84 and now 85 points, Drake only typically gives up 15 points. So is Mizzou that much better than the opponents that Drake has? They're going to score selecting 40, or are they going to drop now to 72 points or fix this a game?
With this, my little Max adventure had finished. But I'd still see a Max train while we went to dinner. That's an older high floor light rail, just like the ones in Denver. After dinner, we'd walk around Portland to walk off the food. I also couldn't help but notice that there seemed to be more Japanese places in Portland compared to other cities in the US that I've been to. Not sure if Portland has a major Japanese population, or if Portlanders are major Japanophiles. But it was just something that I couldn't help but notice. If anyone can explain this, please let me know in the comments. And with that, the day in Portland was over. The next day, I got up and I would get some breakfast, including a waffle and some chicken. And now I am at the Expo Center station. Why? Why not? But I'm gonna head south back to the Tilikum Crossing Bridge and the Oregon Rail Heritage Center. This is the northern terminus of the Yellow Line, but the Yellow Line could be extended to Vancouver, Washington, and make MAX the second cross-state light rail service in America, but only time will tell right now.
Dalles, correct fare is required on TriMet. Se requiere tener un boleto válido y correcto al viajar en TriMet. Smoking is prohibited on buses, trains, and TriMet property. Está prohibido fumar en autobuses, trenes y propiedades de TriMet.
I like how it's kind of how those things are seem to be kind of inconsistent with not including rollerblading and including rollerblading.
over there is the Empire Builder train that Dad and I would eventually take. Unfortunately, that would have to wait for part 2.
That must have been and that must have been one of the many fellas who mastered all good logs. I'm sorry, can't.
I should have stayed on board, but I thought the train wasn't gonna go where I wanted to go. I then got onto a different train, but it stopped well short of where I want to go. So here I am getting on an Orange Line train to head to the ORHC.
The doors are closing. Train departing. Please hold on. Lincoln Street, Southwest 3rd Avenue. Doors to the left. The doors are closing. Train departing. Please hold on. South Waterfront and South Moody Avenue. Doors to the left. The doors are closing. Train departing. Please hold. Smoking is prohibited on buses, trains, and TriMet property. Está prohibido fumar en autobuses, trenes y propiedades de TriMet. Northeast Water Avenue. Doors to the left.
Coincidentally, when I got to the OMSI/SE water station, a Union Pacific train was passing by. A bus blocked the shot, though.
And 6262.
FX2, Division to Gresham.
Come on in. Sorry. How you doing? First time?
Good.
First time?
Yes!
Excellent. Good.
I'm in freaking heaven.
Finally, I was at the ORHF, and I was in the presence of several steam locomotives, including 2 Legends of Steam that until that point I had only dreamed of seeing.
Hello there.
By the way, in rail terms,
Hello, daylight! Oh my god! Alas. A197.
And since I was there, I would take several selfies of myself in front of the steam locomotives of the ORHF. And over here is a collection of locomotives that have run under steam in excursion service at some point over the last 50 to 60 years. Polson Logging 2 was built in 1912 for logging operations in Washington. As of recently, it is under ownership of Rick Franklin and is stored here. Number 2 was going to go to the Albany and Eastern in 2023, but it is currently undergoing a 1472-day inspection until then. Union Pacific 96 was originally built as an SW10 in the late 70s or early 80s. She was then rebuilt with 645 power assemblies at some point, before being retired in 2014. Afterwards, it was sent to the ORHF and does see occasional use.
Here we go. I'm going to see the real life Polar Express one day. Just you wait.
Yeah, I'm looking more about it. About 10 miles an hour, but yeah. We didn't have the same but they were. So it's not really uniform. They're cheap to make, so cheap that they've been logging away from the mountain things to man. They would basically have water tanks, big water tanks, so they would take water out of creeks. They had a big like fire hose and they would suck the water out of the creeks.
Oregon Railroad and Navigation 197 is one of the lesser-known locomotives of the ORHF. She was built in 1905 for the Oregon Railroad and Navigation, a Union Pacific subsidiary, and would eventually work under the Union Pacific until the 1950s, to which UP donated her to the city of Portland. By that time, she was Union Pacific 3203 and looked more like what Union Pacific 3206 looks like today. The donation of 3203 also influenced the donation of SP&S 700 to Portland, which I'll explain in a bit. Eventually in 1996, she was moved out of her display location in Oaks Park and moved to the Brooklyn Roundhouse before she and the rest of the collection was moved to the ORHC and is currently being restored to operating condition. Arguably the most famous of the ORHF's locomotives is Southern Pacific 4449. She was built by Lima in 1941 for the Southern Pacific as part of their 484 class called Golden State, rather than calling them Northerns. In the 1950s, she was retired, but SP wanted to donate a locomotive to Portland, and 4449 just so happened to have been at the end of a deadline, so she was picked for preservation. She was put on display at Oaks Park, where she deteriorated for years, but an employee named John Holst would still oil her bearings and care for her, as well as the 700 and 3203, in the hopes that she and or the others would eventually come back into operation. His efforts were not in vain, as in 1975, she was chosen to pull the western portion of the American Freedom Train tour. She was restored in 30 days, as rules over steam engine restorations weren't as restrictive then, and painted in AFT colors for that tour. She remained that way until Rail Fair 81, when she was painted back into daylight colors, and for the next 20 years, she did excursions even with Union Pacific 844 and Southern Pacific 2472 in daylight colors. In 2002, the 4449 was painted back into American Freedom Train colors in honor of the victims of September 11th, and on her auxiliary tender were the words, "Let's roll," the last known words from Todd Beamer, a passenger on United Airlines Flight 93, better known as the flight that fought back. Beamer and several other passengers would lead a revolt against the Flight 93 hijackers to stop the hijackers from reaching their ultimate goal. They ultimately managed to breach the plane's cockpit and fought with the hijackers for control, but the hijackers ultimately crashed the plane into a field in southern Pennsylvania. But had it not been for the Flight 93 passengers, things would be very different and more lives would have been lost. 4449 was ultimately painted back into her daylight colors in 2004. She continues to operate today, although currently she isn't allowed on the Oregon Pacific, and since she does not have PTC, she can't move on the main line, not even for a collab with the UP Steam program. I do hope she'll be able to run free again soon, even if PTC would be required to run her on the main line. Wow. The museum also has a display of the 1975 American Freedom Trains tour, including photos. Spokane, Portland, and Seattle number 700 is the other big northern at the ORHC. She was originally built in 1938 and was part of the Order of E1 class locomotives, which were based on the Northern Pacific's 484s and worked along the Columbia River Gorge, pulling trains, including the Empire Builder. She would ultimately pull the SP&S's Farewell to Steam excursion on May 20th, 1956. She was stored and ultimately could have been scrapped, but remember OR&N 197? Well, SP&S didn't want to be outdone by the Union Pacific, and basically went, "Oh, hello SP&S, what you want? Hey, I noticed that the Union Pacific gifted you a steam engine. Can I also give you this bigger engine?" Okay, I'll take her, but the best place I can find is Oaks Park. Oh, I think you'll find a way to handle that problem at some point, but thanks for taking my gift. Yeah, sure. You're welcome. Maybe I should give him a hard box of chocolate. What? She stayed at Oaks Park until 1987, when she was moved to the Brooklyn Roundhouse and restored to operation. She has been one of the more expensive steam locomotives to insure and operate, but she still managed to lead many steam excursions over the years. When I visited the ORHC, her cab was open, but I needed to go with a volunteer to be inside it.
What's his name is working on it? Where to go? That's
I don't know. What's his name?
the guy that does all the work on all the Phil.
All right.
So anyhow, here we go. All right.
It's fine.
I'm gonna sit. Oh, okay.
You want to sit in the engineer's seat?
Yes.
You got a camera? You take a picture. Oh, what? This probably has something to do with how much water is in the tender, so you know when you're going to run out. We usually have a gauge like that.
No, don't mess with the control.
Oh, sorry.
Please.
Okay.
This is the throttle.
Usually there's a
Okay.
dipstick up on top somewhere. Oh, okay.
This is the gear shift.
So the
Right now it's set in neutral. But it would be all the way down there when you were starting and forward.
And,
all right.
yeah,
So what you do
pump the fuel.
is you start moving it back. It's like being in a car with a lot of different gears.
Okay.
And you give it gas.
That's what the throttle is?
Yeah, that's what the throttle's for.
Well, we on
This is what's called a train brake. So no, every car in your train has air brakes.
Remember what happened on May 10th?
Yeah.
Right?
You were correct.
So this will operate the air brake system on everything.
1869.
Okay?
Okay.
So if you're stopping a train, you're going to be using the train brake. This is the engine brake. So if you're running light, and the only brakes you have are the brakes on the engine, this is what you're going to use.
58. Oh, I was 51. Okay. Yeah, so I can easily do
all right.
that day. So
Yes.
now you know what you're saying.
I see.
I know you're going to ask me
Yeah,
something.
yeah, exactly.
When this locomotive is parked inside a roundhouse, are like the brakes holding it in place, or are there like blocks underneath the wheels holding it in place?
There's little blocks. There's little chains under there. However, unless you're Charles Atlas, you're not going to push this train anymore.
The track doesn't go there anymore, but they did put
You're talking 500 plus tons
and it
or
was a big
600
political
tons on
deal.
this
They had all these politicians there.
Yeah, I see.
And how we move it around, with a switcher. We don't start the engine, because it takes 3 to 4 days to start an engine like this.
I was genuinely shocked when he mentioned that. That's long? I thought it would take a couple of hours.
No.
Transportation.
That engine will start
Yeah.
in about 3 to 5 hours. Number 2. This one takes
My wife
days
was standing there.
because you got to have
She walked right
265
by, right where
pounds
she was. It was like
per
all
square
hot,
inch
you know,
in the
it's like
boiler.
super hot, and she's all like sweaty and
And the
makeup's
4449,
running, you know,
it's 300 pounds per square inch in the boiler.
Oh my god, I never realized that.
It's a big boiler, okay?
But it was fun.
You got to boil a lot of water, a lot of steam.
That was a
Steam
combination
has to be
of
really hot.
There was a group, the Southern
Now I wonder how long it took to
and the Union
get
Pacific.
3985 up to steam when it was still in service.
Well, the 4014,
Lectures, talks about the two railroads.
they just never let them go cold. In the old days, they never let them go cold because it took too long to start.
And there were people that worked there that actually
They kept them warm all the time or running all the time,
It was interesting
unless they were
hear
going to do
that,
major
And
maintenance.
so what had happened was the Union Pacific was being very successful and making a lot of money.
Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes
A lot of
sense.
bad
Okay.
business decisions.
So basically, the bigger the locomotive, the longer it's going to take to start it up.
Right.
And because of that, they were not able to take advantage.
It's about the size of the boiler
chemical
and about the
they had
pounds
in
per
the
square
South.
inch on the boiler. Like that one's got a relatively small boiler, the number 2, and it's running at about 125 pounds per square inch. So it doesn't take as long, anywhere near as long, to get that one up in steam as it takes this to get up in steam.
Against their game, so they didn't have to pay any tax.
Alright, and also, I know that is most likely the throttle, but what's this?
And then
I'm better on the cab of the 4449. This is the first time we've ever had the 700 cab.
No, nobody liked this.
Never realized that.
So,
you know, it was one of those accountants.
engine, the boiler pressure is supposed to operate at 265.
And the SP is
Is that what that thing's for? Was that the one that has back
Steam
pressure?
chest pressure, yeah, that's
that
probably.
was the end of that. But it was interesting hearing about that. The only the other problem
So,
they had was
Come on over and be the fireman for a
loss,
second.
Alright.
the fruit. That business had kind of dried up with the trucking.
Okay, so when you're the fireman,
Still do some of that, but there's not a whole
your
lot.
job is to make sure the atomizer squirts the oil into the fire, okay?
Okay.
So you gotta make sure
Cars.
you watch the water glass up here very carefully, just like you would at the Colorado Railroad Museum. You watch the water glass. You watch the boiler pressure because you gotta keep it at 265, all right?
Alright.
You watch the fire. You want to see an orange flame with a white glow behind it. That means you got a good fire. It's burning right. This squirts the oil into the fire. Okay. Now normally when the engine is moving, there's a feed water heater that pumps hot water into the boiler at the front of the engine. Okay.
Alright.
But if you're standing still and you need to get water into the boiler, you use this thing.
People blame
No.
University because they followed their business
And
school.
and so, which one of these is the injector for?
The injector.
To put what? This one is for when the locomotive is standing still.
You have a feed water pump.
Oh, so if you turn one of these,
And I think it's this one.
oh,
Consequently, PG&E has some of the most
this must be a lot of things.
This is hot water. It's either this one or this one. I'm not
granted the right to raise
too much on the cab of the 700. This is the first day I've ever been in it.
Up here, it's great because we've got the bottom of the lane. Yes.
Is
The
the
4449 cab is a lot more intricate.
Definitely.
have you ever had the 4449 cab open a day or two?
Yes.
They're going to go up.
Normally we would have the 49
Sure.
cable.
Did they actually? But did they start because of the fires? I don't think.
And why isn't it right now?
Because they're working on it.
I hear that 700 had either is or has just finished being worked on, so is that why the cab is open?
Pardon?
Is that why the 700 cab is open?
No, because we normally have a cab open and they decided to open the cab of the 700. But then they said, oh, people are going to fall out the other side. So they had a table sitting here this morning, and now they've taken the table away. So people could fall over the broom and fall off the engines. You can't be in here unless you're with a docent. So.
Alright. Wow.
This cab is much smaller than the cab on the 49.
And also, this rope here, that's the bell, right?
And a manhole cover right
Could be.
And there's a giant tank underneath there. Right. Okay. And they also had a system of pumps where they could also pump from the bay.
I'd like to know,
high pressure
but I
main system. And I got to go in there.
In fact,
one
that
time.
is the bell.
And it was, they had the old boilers in there for that. They had this big line of boilers, and they had all the steam pumps for that thing.
The interesting
They
thing about this
replaced it
engine is
with,
the design was for a
diesel.
coal-burning engine.
Yeah. But it's all independent, so
But they
if there's a
built it
power
to burn
failure,
oil.
Right, you can crank up the diesel engine
But you
to run
could
the
see
electric
from
generators and pump
this
the
thing
water.
in the tender that there was a coal bunker here
Okay.
at one point. There wasn't one. They never
I
had a
always
coal
loved that old
bunker.
technology.
But the design was for a coal
The
bunker.
new technology's good too. I mean, that's always really interesting.
Well, thank you for taking me into the cab, sir.
My pleasure. Come on. I also have to take you out of the cab. And you can leave that in front. Put it on the bench in the front of the place.
Oh.
You don't have to carry it around. Nobody will steal your stuff.
Sorry, I didn't know that.
After finishing my tour of the 700's cab, I would then head into the ORHC's gift shop and take several photos of some of the train shirts that it had there, including several of the 4449. In addition, here was Chessie, and here was Amtrak 161. Yeah, how should we tell? After I reunited with Dad, we would ultimately head to Portland Union Station to board Amtrak's Empire Builder and take it all the way to Chicago. But that will have to wait for part 2. Thank you for watching this first part, everybody. And until next time, sparkle, sparkle, sparkle. Have a good day.